The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar, Secrets to Social Media Marketing. I'm your host, Amit Taplial. I'm the Director of Marketing at All2Do. We at All2Do bring deep MarTech expertise, CX and demand gen strategy, engagement analytics, and cross-channel orchestration to drive award-winning experiences. First up, let me introduce you to our panelists for today, Juntai Delane and Akhil Mittal. Juntai is the founder and CEO of Digital Delane Consulting, as well as the brand manager for University of Southern California. He's a social media guru, speaker, and evangelist. Juntai has helped many brands, including Coca-Cola, Sony, Verizon, NBC Universal, and Paramount Pictures. A second panelist, Akhil Mittal, Vice President Digital Solutions at All2Do, is a technologist, an entrepreneur, and a consultant with a multitude of expertise and experience spanning marketing technology, digital, cloud, and analytics. He has helped brands like FIS, Arm& Hammer, Lycra, Amex, and Dell. A quick note to the audience, during the webinar, all attendees will be muted. We'll be conducting a few polls to make this more interesting and to share some thoughts around the topic. Should you have any questions, please use the questions widget on your attendee interface, and we'll take these towards the end of the webinar. So over to you, Juntai.
Thank you so much, Amit, for the generous introduction. Hi, everyone. This is Akhil this side, and thank you so much for joining us today. Let me start the discussion with an example of my personal experience. And Junta, if you could click to the next slide. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So yeah, let me start with an example from my personal experience. When we moved to our apartment in Orange County, here, I noticed that our mailbox right there, yeah, you see on the picture, had a big trash can right next to it. I was wondering why is it so? And that boy in the picture is my elder kid. When I received this mail, which didn't even have my name on it, guess what would I have done? Bam! Without even reading it, I leveraged that trash can. Now you know why it was there. No surprise, this trash can always gets flooded every day to the top. The situation is no different when we are on the other side of the table. Our customers and clients expect highly personalized experience when they interact with our brand through multiple digital channels. And if we fail to do that, we end up being unsubscribed or spammed the way I did for that email, for that mailbox. The hard reality for all of us as marketers is that the only KPI critical to our contribution to the organization's revenue in terms of qualified leads we deliver to the sales or the business development team. If that's not true in your scenario, then probably you're sitting in the wrong discussion, my friend. That's what I can say. And holding on to this slide, I'll say today our biggest battle is to provide much better customer experience compared to our competition. This cannot happen unless this experience is synchronous across all the channels, be it our website, email, and social media. As an example, my email automation tool needs to be aware that the same prospect had clicked on my LinkedIn campaign as well as downloaded this ebook from my website and so on. So moving next, again repeating, social media is a critical element of our customer experience strategy. This is in no case an option, but a mandatory lifeline in this battle of sharks and carnivores. There are numerous data points. We keep hearing about the growth and increasing importance of social media. I'm sure you must have been exposed to a lot of them every day. Uh, Quick examples in North America, people spend more time, to be precise, 15 minutes on an average, on social media than the television, which was considered to be the best media for advertising a few years ago. Next 5 years of our marketing spend on social media is going to increase many folds. The numbers may change, but it has to increase many folds. That's what all this data proves. There's one quick point I really want to highlight, specifically for the B2B organizations, that they are not immune to it. A lot of us as B2B marketers think that no, we can avoid social media, we can focus on other channels. That's not the case. Forrester, this report I'm referring to, it says 74% or more of your buyers have made up 50% of their decision before even they reach out to you in person. So this is something which we have to do, can't avoid it. Time for a quick poll. Amit, over to you if you can open up the poll for the audience.
Sure, Jim, give me just one sec.
There really is 1:1 personalization core to your customer engagement strategy right now. So simple options, yes, no. Do click it, and then it will allow us a better view as to where we are today. Don't hesitate. If it's not there, it's fine. At least we are aware that we don't have it today. That's more important than having one and not working on it, kind of stuff.
Sure. We'll close the poll in another 10 to 12 seconds, guys. So if you could just drop in your opinions, please. Great. I hope everybody has voted in. I'm closing the poll right now.
Perfect. I mean, so yeah, with that, let me pass it on to our social media marketing guru, Jonte. Jonte, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amit and Akhil. I'm extremely happy to be presenting with you guys today. I mean, you guys have done some great work in the digital space. So I look forward to continuing this webinar and look forward to the partnership with Altudo and Digital Domain. So for everyone who has joined the webinar, thank you guys so much for taking out the time in your day to do so. I really am excited about this, and I know you guys are going to find a great deal of value during this webinar. So before I get into the nuts and bolts of things, I want to let you guys know a little bit more about me. I am, again, Jonte Delane, a very unique name, but I am also a social media influencer in some markets with content marketing and just an influencer in the digital space. So I've worked with many different organizations, from NBC Universal to Paramount to Sony, Verizon, Coca-Cola, and more. And so I'm not saying all of that to boast, but I'm saying that so you guys get a good understanding about who I am and the type of value that is coming your way shortly. I'm also very active on social media, so feel free to tweet at me, to post some things on Instagram, take pictures of your screen, whatever you need to do, because there's going to be a great deal of value here. So without further ado, let's jump right into the agenda. Now, there are 4 key things that I want to talk about today, and one is understanding your audience. That's first things first. Oftentimes, I work with large brands that have a audience persona and have a good understanding of their audience, backed by a ton of research. But oftentimes, your audience behavior changes, and therefore, your strategies on social media need to change with it. I'm also going to be talking about social media best practices, right? That's probably why we're all here today, is we want to know what works with social media. So I'm going to give you those tools that'll allow you to win in the social media space. I'm also going to talk about what I like to call the 4 R's of social media. Now, essentially, this would help you to create content that is highly relevant and that can convert your target audience. Oftentimes, as marketers and leaders of major brands, we get stuck on this hamster wheel of creating content for content's sake. So this 4 R's of social media will allow you to create a type of content that truly resonates with your target audience. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the ROI of social media and how to measure that. Now, I know this is probably commonplace to most of you guys, but with the algorithm changes that occur on social media, and as well as the consumer behaviors and how they interact and engage with brands on social media, those ROI formulas are going to change accordingly. So I want to take a deep dive into that as well. All right, so this presentation is going to be jam-packed with a bunch of different content and valuable information that you can implement right away. All right, so strap on your seatbelt and let's go for a ride. All right, so when we talk about the winning formula for social media strategy, you have to consider these main things. And one is, of course, your audience personas, the goals that you want to have on social media. The content and the visuals are, of course, very important. Scheduling, A/B testing, a paid budget, social media listening, and of course, measurements. Now, these are all the key ingredients to a winning social media strategy. Now, if you look at this slide and go down each point as a checkbox, you want to make sure that you're doing each and every one of these. Now, I can give you all the ingredients, right? But if you're used to cooking food at home, then you know just because you have the ingredients, that doesn't make you a chef. So I want to provide some of the best practices for you guys that'll make you more of a chef than more of a person with a list of ingredients. All right, so first things first, taking a dive into building your personas. Now, as I mentioned earlier, as large brands, we probably have a good idea of who our personas are and who we're speaking to. And more than likely, you have strategies and campaigns that are aligned with those, the wants and the needs of those personas. But it's very important to consider that the market has changed, as well as the algorithms on social media have changed. And so it's important to understand how your consumers are currently engaging in social networks so that you can create content that truly resonates with them. So it's all about knowing that target audience member. So if you understand and take a refresh of your target personas, it's going to give you an idea of which content they actually need. It'll also give you an understanding of the tone, style, and delivery of your campaign strategy. For example, what you've posted 2 and 3 years ago may not work as well today. One, because of the algorithm changes, and the other because consumers have changed their requirements for what brands, what they're going to do and how they're going to engage with today's brands in the social media space. You also want to make sure that you understand your audience enough to know the topics in which you should be posting. And so, understanding what keeps them up at night, whatever their challenges are, what are the business problems that your offering or your product or service can help them solve, are all the type of content that you should be creating. And also doing a persona or target audience refresh will allow you to get information about where your current audience is actually getting their information. So if you've done your personas maybe 2 years ago, for example, there's obviously new platforms. There's new types of content that your target audience is engaging with. So you need to make sure that you're in line with their expectations. All right, so what questions should you be asking? Well, if you understand the low-hanging fruit, the information that's easily accessible, such as their job title, the demographic, geographic location, their age, and their business goals and so on. It'll, again, allow you to get a better understanding of who your target audience is. Now, you'll notice a recurring theme is the more that you understand your audience, obviously the better you're able to serve them, the better you're able to create the type of content that is going to resonate with them as well. The name of the game here is really to understand what they care about. That's the thing. Making content that revolves around your target audience before your product or your service. Now, some of you may think like, wait a minute, that's not what they pay me for, right? But today's target audience is going to want information that's going to help them. not wanting information about your product, your service, or your offering. That's very, very important to consider. So if you understand that, then you'll know about the content types or the topics that interest your target audience most, as well as the type of messaging that you can create around that content to truly engage with them. So when we talk about the secrets of social media marketing, you have to understand where is your target audience currently residing? Are they more on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, Instagram? Do they consume more YouTube videos? Are they on Snapchat, for example? What types of forums or groups or communities are they involved with? And what time of day are they usually online? And so these things are critical once you have a good idea of your target audience and how they consume content, as well as where they are. We need to take the next step and create a strategy around that information. So I have a poll for you guys. Now, I'm going to ask you, do you currently have a social media strategy in place? Now, most of you may say, you know what, Jonte, yes, we have a social media strategy in place. However, we want to consider the changes in consumer behavior. We also want to consider the changes in the algorithms of the social networks in which our target audience resides. So I ask you again, do you currently have a social media strategy in place? You see some of the answers there. Yes, but it needs optimization. No, not yet. And you need help, or just flat out, no, you don't have a social media strategy. So I'm going to give you guys some time to answer the poll question now. I'll give you guys about 10 seconds to do so. And this is an easy question, guys, so you guys should be able to answer this easily. So I'll give you guys a few more seconds as they come in there. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead into the next slide, give us good information about that, and we'll review some of your answers a little later on in the presentation. So now I'll jump into what you guys really want to know, and that's social media best practices. As I mentioned earlier, it's so important to understand the changes in social media, and you guys are in for a treat because oftentimes your competitors aren't keeping up with the latest changes in social media and also the best practices. So in this case, I'm going to provide you with some key examples and some specific posts about, specific posts that showcase what some large brands are doing in the social media space and what I like about them. Okay, so let's start with Twitter. Now, I'm sure all of you guys have a presence on Twitter, and I'm sure you guys may be utilizing Twitter as a customer service outlet to answer some questions that your customers, your clients, or your prospects may be asking. But with Twitter, it's a great place to, of course, disseminate any information that you have on your blog, for example, or any news about your company or organization. Oftentimes, we have clients that live tweet events that they're producing. Also, live streaming is available on Twitter. Some of you may or may not know, but they have live streaming possible based on an app called Periscope. And so it's a Twitter-owned app. You're able to use Periscope to live stream on Twitter. Now, it's very important that you focus on utilizing the native features within social networks, because if you do so, they like to reward you with more organic reach. For example, if you were to live stream on Twitter, that's something that people wouldn't normally do. So you will find you have more reach and more engagements if you do those types of activities. And this example is using Periscope through Twitter. Also, short form video is important as well. So going along with the theme of doing things that people would not traditionally do, posting short form video is going to be beneficial for your brand because Twitter is going to reward that type of action. You may have heard of Twitter chats as well. So Twitter chats, I think, the amount of Twitter chats have decreased recently, but I still think that it is a good way to engage with your target audience by creating a community around your product or your service and talking about different things that are relevant to your prospect. Twitter is also great for having polls, right? You can put a poll on your Twitter profile and pin it right there to the top. And if you're looking for more demographic information, if you're looking for focus group type of responses, you're able to create a poll and pin it right there on your Twitter profile. Influencer interaction is also another great benefit of Twitter. Now, depending on your industry, there's a lot of influencers on Twitter. For example, if you're looking to get and connect with journalists or other influencers, they're going to have a Twitter account. And more than likely, they're probably going to respond quicker to a tweet or a DM, maybe even more so than an email, right? Even if you don't have their email information, then you can send them a tweet. So it's important to think about that. Also, the Twitter platform is a platform where news is very prevalent. So if you have anything newsworthy, you want to make sure that you post that newsworthy content on Twitter, because most of your journalists and your media influencers are going to have Twitter profiles. So you can tag them on those posts that you have on Twitter to get their attention about your news story. All right. So here's some examples of tweets that I personally like. And it's a mixture between private accounts or personal accounts as well as branded accounts. Focusing on current events is very important. So in this particular post here, one weird trick to getting universal hair care that American insurance companies don't want you to know, right? And they have a picture of, you probably know who that is, right? So I think it's important to hop on current trends, but also utilize some humor within your brand as well, so that you can get some viral virality to that particular post. Now, some of you may have heard about the Wendy's fiasco that went on. Basically, they're roasting anyone that comes in and engages with their brand, in particular with McDonald's. And so they had this back and forth with McDonald's. And you would think that this is well beyond or not aligned with Wendy's brand, but it sparked a lot of interest and debate and personality shown through your brand, through that brand. And you can do so as well. So this is an example of that in their interaction with some snarky interaction with a post from a customer. Also, showcasing your partnerships on Twitter works as well. For this, Eggo presented their partnership by focusing on recipes in coordination with Stranger Things, which is a Netflix show, right? So that product integration into their posts are also very important, and having a visual, interesting visual with that post it works well on Twitter. All right, so we'll jump into Facebook. Now, I have a love and hate relationship with Facebook, because I often talk with clients that have done so much to build their Facebook following, but they aren't allocating the right amount of budget to truly reach their Facebook following. So with the recent algorithm change, you absolutely must pay to play. And even taking it a step further, not only must you pay to play, but you also must pay to engage. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we all are familiar with the Cambridge Analytica privacy breach and how Mark Zuckerberg testified to Congress and basically explained to them how Facebook works and some of the things that they're doing to rectify this breach. Now, as marketers that are working in the digital space on social networks, that is a very, very important event, because it has residual effects around how brands are able to engage with their target audience on social media. So when you are posting things such as blogs, you may not get the same organic reach that you got, let's say, 6 months ago. And there's a reason why. Now Facebook isn't a platform for sharing information, but Facebook is a platform for engaging and talking about different topics. So they would rather have a brand converse with their target audience than to send them salesy messages or send them outside of their platform. That's the reason why blog posts will not work or is not as effective on Facebook as it once was. So what we like to do with some of our clients is actually create a conversation around whatever topic that blog is. And then once people engage with it, send people in the comments section to your blog. So that's another hack or best practice that you guys are able to utilize when engaging on Facebook. Video is also another very, very important thing, because if you understand social media business, then you understand who the competitors are. Facebook owns Instagram. They're competing with Twitter. They're competing with Google and YouTube. And so if you were to post things natively on Facebook, meaning uploading video natively to Facebook, instead of simply posting an Instagram link on Facebook, you're going to get more organic reach. It's all about positive reinforcement. So if you're able to utilize some of the native features of social networks, so that's polling for Instagram, or excuse me, polling for Twitter, and uploading native videos for Facebook, those are all things that you're gonna that'll get you more organic reach. Facebook Live is also another type of feature that Facebook really rewards. Having a lot of Facebook Lives are gonna for sure get you more organic reach and get your product or service out there to your target audience. How-to videos work well, and the reason why is because, again, Facebook is competing with the Google and YouTube. So if people search within Facebook, instead of going out, opening up a new browser and focusing on searching on Google, then you're going to get rewarded. So if you make sure that your brand creates some how-to videos that answer specific questions to some of your target audience that your target audience has. Also, Facebook groups is important with the new algorithm change on Facebook. As I mentioned earlier, you have to not only pay to play, but pay to engage. So Facebook now is essentially splitting the news feed. So they're showcasing information that's only your personal connections are going to be posting on, and also a separate feed for brands as well. So it's going to be more difficult for brands to hop into those personal type of conversations that are going on. And so if you are to create a Facebook community or Facebook group around your brand, you would be able to directly converse with your target audience. It obviously sends notifications once you have a new form of content and so on. So that's another best practice that I would include with Facebook. Now, I hope you guys are taking plenty of notes. Of course, we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this webinar, but make sure you guys are taking notes, because these are things that you guys can implement right away when this webinar ends. Now, here's some examples of some client examples of Facebook posts and why we posted those on behalf of the client. Now, when you look at this first post here, you see a smiling face. The face is cut off, so it draws people into the image. And front and center, you have the product, right? And it's around a football, which is very local, and so that content is going to resonate well with the type of client, or excuse me, type of target audience that is connected with that brand. Also, here you may think that this is a simple post, but what's important to understand is this post is a simple gallery. And although you may think that if you're posting images, you should focus on Instagram, which is true. But again, Facebook rewards things that people don't normally do on their network. So if you have a photo gallery, creating a post from that photo gallery is naturally going to help with getting more organic engagement. We also see this post here from another client that we did. And so we basically uploaded a native video, but that video has the assets and the look and the feel of an Instagram story. So if you're used to engaging, if your target audience is used to engaging with Instagram stories and they see that similar content on Facebook, you're going to get more engagements that way, because again, it's tailoring the content to what your target audience is used to consuming and essentially likes to consume. So that's why these are some of my favorites there. Now let's talk about Instagram. Now we all know that Instagram, well, we probably don't all know, but at least for us on behalf of our clients and behalf of our research that we do, we've noticed that with regard to engagement, Instagram is the dominant platform. You know, it's obviously not as big as Facebook, but it's probably growing at a faster rate than Facebook at this point. So we understand that quote images work really well. And so establishing quote templates for your brand is obviously very important. Some behind the scene photos, event highlights, and more importantly, showcasing your social responsibility. Consumers today love when brands are transparent. They love when brands have a sense of accountability. And more often, when brands post something that has to do with affecting the lives and the social well-being of their target audience, then it usually bodes really well on behalf of the brand. Now, there's several case studies that support this. You know, when brands stick up for particular social issues, they often see an increase in support and an increase in their bottom line. Instagram Stories is also another great feature. This is a native feature within Instagram. And more often, there are higher engagements with Instagram Stories than individual posts on the platform. So if you're a brand and you are not utilizing Instagram Stories, you are missing the mark with your target audience, because they're able to get the sights, the sounds, the look and feel, and your interpretation of what's posted in the story, which allows them to get a good understanding of that story. And again, who doesn't love stories? Everyone loves stories, right? But you can't necessarily get that story feel if you just simply post something on Instagram. So once you create those types of Instagram stories, it can help with your company culture. And if your key stakeholders understand your company culture, then they're going to be supporters of your brand. That looks like more sales for your bottom line, increase in stock prices, and partnerships, and so on. So these are all the reasons to utilize Instagram to showcase that brand story, to sprinkle a little bit of corporate responsibility in there, because it's going to bode well for your target audience. Now, here's some brief examples of the types of graphics and visuals that I like. So on my social media network, as I mentioned earlier, we know that quote templates work well. So this is a quote template, but it has a video within this quote template, so people can hear exactly what I'm saying in my talk. Another is actually having a story develop within the swipe function or the gallery function within Instagram. So one image has one story, you swipe to the next, and the story expands from there and continues on, and so on and so on. 1 minute video clips are also very popular. Oftentimes, these are what I call thumb stoppers. And these thumb stoppers are essentially content that would make people stop and pay attention to that particular post. So focusing on, again, those how-tos for Instagram also is going to work well. In this particular example is how-to step-by-step on preparing a certain meal. So those types of posts really work well within Instagram. We also have Instagram stories that you're able to use as ads. Now, if you have a business account and you have over 10,000 followers, you're able to add a link on Instagram. And these links allow people to simply swipe up, and they would automatically be taken to your landing page or your website or of your offer. So these are different ways in order to engage the audience, and then creating that call to action at the bottom there to make them swipe up. All right, so now we'll go into LinkedIn. And so this is also a great way to expand your brand in the social space. And part of the secrets to social media marketing within LinkedIn is that we know that LinkedIn wants to be, at least based on our engagements with clients and in our research that we've done, LinkedIn wants to be a news source. And so if you have news, obviously, about your company on the corporate end, making sure that is disseminated on LinkedIn is going to be beneficial for your brand. Best practices, tips and tricks, as well as thought leadership is also important. Here is a platform where you have the ability to position your brand as a resource, and people who are looking to partner, work with, or work at your company are going to look at the type of content that you create on LinkedIn. Quick takeaways, we all are very busy, so we want to make sure that we're getting right to the point with the type of content that we post on this platform, and making sure that it's essentially positioned for your C-suite. And for example, I wouldn't post the entire body of a report, but maybe a quick executive summary could be a good post, and then having a link to that report so that those executives can drill down and get the content. Humor is also another thing that I'm 50-50 on. I think LinkedIn is a professional network, but it was recently acquired, I believe maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, by Microsoft. And Microsoft wants to compete directly with the Facebooks and the Twitters and so on. So you'll start to notice things on your timeline with LinkedIn, such as more videos and things that aren't necessarily professional, right? But I think you'll find a lot of things in your news stream that really are people building their personal brands and people connecting with other people. So that's the only thing that I think is beneficial when creating that type of content, is because there's a shift in consumer perception of different brands, and having people wanting to hear from people. Your C-suite, your management is going to need to be highly active on LinkedIn, because that type of content, based on the Microsoft acquisition, is going to perform better than mere content that's coming from your brand. And if you guys have questions about that, I'll be able to answer that at the end of this presentation. So here's some examples of the top brands on LinkedIn based on a recent report that they released. So for PTC, it basically is showing their thought leadership and really focusing on their CEO and his presentation at a conference. And for Schneider Electronics, this post here in the middle showcases their corporate responsibility. So, and it's talking about, their CO2 usage or how, CO2 usage is impacting the world, so on and so forth. So it's not directly talking about their brand, but it's really showcasing that social responsibility, as I mentioned, is also very important these days. And for Hays, what's interesting about this particular post is you notice that they are using hashtags, right? So hashtags can be used on LinkedIn, and I think should be used because it's going to help increase the visibility of your content. But for Hays, they talk about the digital divide, and it's not the digital divide that you may think with regard to your consumers, but it's a digital divide between the company and their employees. So it's an interesting perspective here, and it's one of the reasons why I think this post works well, and one of the reasons why I think Hays has made it as the top 10 list of brands that are doing really well on LinkedIn. And so last but not least, I want to focus on live streaming. And again, live streaming is something that can be done on Twitter through Periscope. It can be done directly through Facebook. And I'm pretty sure, I'm willing to bet that Microsoft is also going to implement live streaming on LinkedIn. I know it's kind of crazy, right? But mark my words, it's coming. So with live streaming, it's great to have some behind the scenes look of your organization. And so we, as an example, we had a client who built out a small studio in their office, and they found that focusing on more employee generated content, such as, we set up a program where we had their employees focus on opening up a camera and showcasing what they're working on, as an example, or just showcasing some of the small wins that the brand has received. And that has gotten more engagement than the generic or very polished content or videos that the client developed. And so we found that in our analytics. And so hopefully you guys can take some of that information and apply it to your brands today. So these things are all very important. Again, live streaming works with building corporate responsibility, works with developing a story and showcasing your company culture. Now, another question that I often get from clients is, how often should we post? Now, keep in mind, there's been a recent algorithm change. So frequency of your post certainly matters. So with Twitter, we usually post, tell our clients to post 10 to 12 times a day. Usually works. That's the sweet spot. And it ultimately depends on, one, if your brand is localized or if you have an international brand. So for example, if you post throughout the day, people who are waking up in the morning or going to bed at night would be able to see your content. If you have customers on the other side of the globe, for example. So making sure you're sprinkling out your posts throughout the day, and then also recycle some of the posts as well. So that's one of the things that we do for clients. And it's important to also understand that with the new Twitter algorithm change, you are no longer able to post the same thing twice. So you have to mix up your the calls to action. You have to mix up the names of the posts and things like that, the hashtags that you use, and so on. And so we make sure that we look at the analytics and focus on which posts work well, and then we would recycle that post and then create derivatives of that post title throughout the day. With Facebook, for example, 1 to 2 times a day works. Obviously, mornings and evenings works well, and I'm sure you guys probably can understand why, because you're either checking your Facebook before work or right when you get in, and you're checking it in the evening, right? And so it's very important to post around those times of when your audience is online and when they're looking for information. So for example, if you have, what we like to do is, in Mondays or Tuesdays, we like to focus on more dense type of content. That way, you can possibly have your target audience bookmark that content to read later. They can share it and so on. And usually toward the end of the week, we have lighter content, more entertaining type of content, because by the end of the week, people are kind of spent from work or something like that, and they want to know what's going on for the weekend or something like that. And so you're able to capture their attention by posting in the mornings and evenings and focusing on the type of content that you post, from more dense in the beginning of the week and a little bit lighter toward the end of the week. And I pretty much follow that same model for Instagram as well. Posting 1 to 2 times a day usually works, and that's a sweet spot that we've noticed for our clients. Now let's talk about ads. I cannot talk about social media marketing and the secrets for social media marketing without talking about ads. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that in order to get your content out there, you're going to have to establish a budget in order to reach your target audience. So there are various ways that you're able to do that. One of the ways that we do that for clients is we focus on optimizing our ads based on the trends that are going on social media, and making sure that we piggyback on those trends and create content and thus social media ads with that content, so that we can not only have a paid reach, but we would also catch some virality based on creating ads that piggyback certain current social media trends or topics. And so this could be, for example, relevant industry events. So if you have a conference that's in town that is within your industry, focusing ads on those conference attendees is one of the things that we would recommend for our clients, as well as focusing on competitors and directly targeting their pages and any of their affiliations as well on social media. We also like to create ads that is really based on user engagement. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we create ads based on the content, the specific content that your target audience has consumed. And we even take a granular approach and serve different ads to individuals that have consumed maybe 25% of your content or your video, and a separate ad for people that have consumed 75% of that video. And we'll create an ad strategy around that so that you can serve highly relevant ads to people based on their engagement with your content. We do this for the websites that they visited on your page as well, and the purchases or the products, the purchases or the offerings that they have patronized for your brand as well. And so again, when you talk about upselling, when you talk about trying to reach out to your current base, you can do so with ads, because again, they're all on social media and they're engaging with their friends and family. So you need to have that paid spend in order to get your ad in their timeline. All right, so another aspect of secret for social media marketing is understanding what you're using each social network for. So again, you're focusing on, Twitter, you're looking at targeting people based on who they follow, the keywords. They have ad products such as lead generation cards, website cards. You're able to direct message people and so on, or directly target people based on the use of their mobile app. With Instagram and Facebook, you're able to target obviously by those similar focuses such as age, gender, interest, as well as lookalike audiences. And those lookalike audiences basically are Facebook taking all of the incoming traffic on your website or people who have engaged with your content, and they're looking for people who are similar to the people that are already in your or liking your page, for example. So this is another way to grow beyond your current sphere of influence, beyond the people that are just in your network. LinkedIn, this advertising is probably going to be more expensive than the other three, but you're able to obviously target based on company size, seniority, the job titles, certain skills. You're able to do so by providing sponsored updates or sending direct email or excluding different features for your ads. Another secret is to listen, and listen intently. And the reason why this is very important is because of many different reasons, and most of them are presented on the slide. But it's going to give you an idea of what type of industry related questions people are asking. And as you listen, you'll be able to simply create content based on those questions. It's going to identify who's actually engaging with your brand and your content, so you can understand who are the key individuals that can help amplify that content. It's going to let you know who's talking about your brand. It's going to let you understand what your competitors are doing. And it's going to allow you to engage proactively with people who are aligned with your brand or who are in your target audience. And of course, providing that customer support based on the things that you're hearing online, things that people are talking about that possibly can complete a sale, or if they're having a problem with your product or your service, then you're able to proactively jump in. And stuff like that, obviously, people really like and has the potential to go viral. A/B testing is also very important. I'll actually speed through this slide quickly, but you have to A/B test because you're essentially going to have more data points to get a better understanding of how your campaign is performing. So if you have one ad, you can't base any updates or changes or optimization based on that one ad. So we'll have a client, for example, that's focusing on, let's say, the Hispanic market, and we have a ad that we build that focuses on a Hispanic woman, and the other ad showcases a Hispanic woman and her husband, and the other ad showcases Hispanic woman, her husband, as well as her children, right? So those are the type of ads that you, the ways in which you should A/B test your ads so that you can get more data points to completely optimize your ads. Now, again, you should be testing some of the visuals, switching out different images, repurposing live streams, using videos, switching out some of the messaging and the hashtags that you're using, as well as the time and frequency of your ads. So, I mean, I have a poll here, and if you can go ahead and put that poll on the screen, but I want to know if you outsource your social media efforts. Now, outsourcing could mean a number of different things, but click yes if you outsource any of your content creation, or if you outsource your social media management. You may outsource your paid social management as well, or maybe even your strategy, right? So if you're outsourcing any part of your social media efforts, go ahead and mark yes there. Now, I know I've been talking a lot. I love the sound of my voice, and I want to make sure you guys are still with me. I'm going to go ahead and take a sip of tea as you guys make your answers. All right, so I see we have some some answers coming in. Now, we can go ahead and go back to the slide there. Okay, awesome. If you guys did not get a chance to answer, if we cut you guys off, go ahead and just put it in the chat box there as well. All right. So again, having that social media strategy is very important. And I talked about, in the beginning of my presentation, I talked about understanding your personas and using that understanding of your personas to create content that will resonate with them. And then also understanding where you should distribute that content, finding out where your persona is and making sure that you're distributing it in the right places. And doing so with the notion that your social media strategy that you developed last year or the year before or the year prior to that has changed because consumer behavior has changed, as well as the algorithms on social media has changed. So the type of content that you create should be aligned and relevant to today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the 4 R's of social media content that would help you in the process of creating content. Now, this is something that we start off with when we do a content audit for our clients. Now, one thing that I would recommend is the first R, is before you start creating new content, repurpose your old content. Now, this is very, very important because, one, it helps alleviate the stress of trying to come up with more content, right? You can repurpose what you have. And it's important to focus on repurposing content that not only is successful with regard to vanity metrics, meaning the number of views or number of engagements, but successful with regard to conversions. And that's very important. So focusing on the content that is converting more so than the content that is the most read, or so on and so forth. Repurposing that content and utilizing it for your social media is going to be a win. So that's one secret that you can use with social media. So what does that look like? Well, if you are able to shoot a video, from that video, you're able to, actually, let me take a step back, something a little bit easier. Let's say that your CMO or your CEO is on a podcast. take the audio from that podcast and transcribe it. From that transcription, you can create a blog post, whether it be, you just copying the transcription verbatim and posting that as a blog post, or creating another blog post from the topics that were talked about in that podcast. You also can take pieces, tweetable pieces from that content and post it out on Twitter. You can also create social media quote images from your CEO and post that on your Instagram account. All these different things that you can do to repurpose your content are key. Now, the second R is to rewrite. So you want to create, again, that new content from some existing content. So you may find content on your blog, for example, that is outdated, that has antiquated statistics, or that has examples that aren't relevant with today's time. So going back to that old content and rewriting it so that you can refresh the article, refresh that content with information that's relevant today. The third R is retiring your old content. Now, oftentimes this has a benefit for SEO, meaning that you want to make sure that the content that's on your website or on your blog is highly relevant across the board. If you have content that isn't as relevant, you may want to consider retiring it. Now, don't go retiring old content, right? You should definitely speak with someone, a consultant or agency, to figure out the best type of content, the best way to remove some of the old content. But we have noticed, based on our clients, having them remove some of the outdated or old content helps with their search visibility. And the other is redesign something, right? Redesigning that content. So it's creating a infographic based on a previous piece of content that can be distributed through social media. So again, those 4 R's of creating social media content really has nothing to do with actually creating new content. Surprise, right? It's really looking at what you currently have now and doing different things to repurpose, rewrite, redesign so that you can amplify that content through social media. All right. Last question here, guys. I know you guys are still with me. Thanks for hanging on. I'm sure you guys are taking copious notes. You guys are writing away, because I know I'm dropping some valuable information that you guys can take with you right after this webinar. And I know we're going over just a tad bit, but we had some people come in a little bit late. So I'm going to go ahead and try to breeze through it. But do you have a paid social budget? That's a question for you guys here. So answer right away, yes or no, or yes, but you need to optimize your spends. Go ahead and answer that question right now. And I appreciate everyone who has sticking with us. We're going to have a Q&A question really quickly right after this poll. All right, so I'm going to breeze through these slides with regard to the ROI. I can briefly touch on ROI, but what I'll do is we can send these out to you guys a little bit later, and I can give you guys some examples of the way in which we calculate ROI and optimize the ROI based on today's terms, based on what's happening today in social media and not years ago. So I hope you guys have a lot of questions for us, because we're definitely looking forward to answering them. So I'm going to bring Akil on the line as well. I think you have the ability to see the questions here. So I'm going to take a sip of my tea again.
Yeah.
And
so Tunde, I have a few questions. I'll just take 1 sec to categorize them into 2 broad categories.
Sure. No problem at all.
Yeah.
And so I know that we have some questions coming in. And so what I like to do is I like to be very concise with the questions. So I'm gonna respond with the information that'll directly answer your questions concisely, and hopefully you can take that and implement it right away. So as Amit, I believe you are categorizing some of the questions there.
Yep. So the first
Um,
category of questions for you would be on the efficacy of social media campaigns. What are the best indicators of efficacy for social media campaigns? How do you measure uh, performance?
yes, and so I think one of the best ways to measure performance is to um, understand the type of content that your audience wants and resonates with, because you're not only dealing with creating great content, but you're also dealing with the algorithms. So it's twofold here. So you may have a great piece of content, but if it doesn't get through the algorithms that are now in place, it's going to be difficult to judge if that is a successful piece of content. So what works here is to make sure that you're connecting your social media efforts with your offline efforts or your website's efforts, meaning to connect make sure that you have the right connecting or tracking pixels on there so that you can immediately get the ROI with your spins, and also with your engagements. So that's the short answer. Or excuse me, that's a long answer, but the short answer is to make sure that your social media is moving the needle, and tracking everything in your social media to determine its efficacy.
That's very interesting. Jinte. In fact, most of the social media platforms, the way you stack them up, your MarTech stack does play a major role in how you measure these. So imagine your website and your social channels are connected to a platform which curates the customer journey throughout. And these listening posts could act as a very huge indicator in terms of in terms of conversions and maximizing these conversions. That's fantastic.
Mhm.
So the second category of questions is around, and what I've done is I've grouped them together so that
Okay,
we have, because we are running short of time. So
sure.
these are questions revolving around B2B marketing, or rather the B2B social marketing. And
Okay.
they most of these are around how do you determine you have ears on the ground, how do you determine share of voice. So again, uh, related to listening, you mentioned that earlier in your presentation.
Yes.
How do
So
you, yeah.
so just to reiterate repeat your question, you mentioned um, focusing on B2B, how to determine your share of voice within your industry or market.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct? Okay.
that's it.
Perfect. So yeah, so there are tools that allow you to determine your share of voice. So we have those tools, and we've worked with different clients to uh, uh, do an analysis of their share of voice. So one of the things could be the usage of hashtags. If you have branded hashtags, and are they involved in any social conversations, any particular keywords, and understanding the number of keywords that are used, and in those keywords is your brand mentioned, right? And so you can basically determined the growth of share of voice based on the number of mentions of your brand within that keyword. And so one of the things that we do with clients, we set up a business intelligence dashboard that'll showcase exactly the growth of the share of voice within their market. And then from that information, we're able to create strategies on how to increase that share of voice by attaching influencers, by partnering and sponsoring and so on, so that you can have a greater share of voice within your industry, which ultimately will lead to more conversions.
Awesome. So I'll have to be the bad guy and put a stop to this, because we are way over our stipulated timings for the webinar. We'll have to be cognizant of our attendees' schedules.
Okay.
For all the attendees, we have your questions. We'll make sure Jintai and Akhil reply to them directly. If you have any further questions, please feel free to send us your queries to marketing@alltudo.co, and we'd be happy to help. And we'll be sending you the poll results post. You can expect a email from us detailing the poll results. We'll share them with you. So
Awesome. Well, it's definitely been a pleasure speaking with you guys. Akil and Amit. It's also great to be partnering with Altudo on this, and hopefully this presentation provided some valuable nuggets for you guys. So with that said, we'll go ahead and sign off.
Thank you so much, Jay, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.